Black spending matters.
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 Black people wake up.
So you apprentice under Marcus Garvey?
Indirectly, because I was born in 1939, he died in 1940. But in 1963, in the middle of the Black Freedom Movement, I was leading the movement in San Francisco, a 10,000 person movement, 5-year movement for end economic apartheid. A book came out on Garvey called Black Moses, written by an author named Cronin. So that's the first time a lot of us knew anything about Garvey because he'd been erased from the history books. So in my case and a lot of others in the black movement, we began to draw lessons from Garvey. And what we learned from Garvey was, one, institution building, how to build your own institutions. In the civil rights movement, we knew how to do marches, boycotts, demonstrations. We learned how to build institutions. From Garvey, we also learned economic self-reliance, how to build businesses with black money, money coming from black people. And then some of us, we were beginning to think about Africa as a place that we could ultimately return to. So for Garvey, Garvey was like my first master in the sense that I learned some fundamentals about organizing from him. Later, Malcolm X would become my second master. The main vision of Garvey's movement was the independence from colonialism and the unification of Africa. He wanted to see Africa free of the Western powers. It was just too soon for that to happen because the West was still too strong. But he predicted that he was a prophet. He predicted that with the Second World War, Africa would strike its blow for freedom, and so would Asia. And that's exactly what happened. He even predicted that the Japanese would be involved in the Second World War against some of the Western powers. So he was right about that. But his spirit of African independence was in Kwame Nkrumah. It was in the 5th Pan-African Congress, which was the most important meeting Africans had in the 20th century, where African leaders like Nkrumah, Azikiwe, Kenyatta, George Padmore, who was from Trinidad, who was a principal advisor of Nkrumah, they plotted the course of African independence. And after that conference in 1945, went about seeking Africa's freedom. So the vision they drew from was Garvey's, because Garvey was calling for immediate freedom and independence of Africa from white rule. In fact, blacks coming out of slavery are the ones who built the economic base of this country at the end of slavery. And when post-Reconstruction came, when they stripped us of the right to vote, they started bulldozing us, killing our leaders because many of them were holding political office. Blacks concluded they had to build up an economy. And so you had black people coming out of secret societies. These were societies in Africa that were the highest educational systems in the world. We brought those into enslavement in the U.S. and in the Caribbean and South America. And so what happened at the end of slavery, these secret societies became the basis for us building up economic businesses. One of the first were burial societies. All blacks had this African belief that your life hereafter was important, so they had to have a way to prepare for it, so they would put money aside for that. Burial societies became insurance companies. Those insurance companies were $100 million insurance companies, multi-million-dollar insurance companies. And the blacks took their secret societies and stuck them in the Masons, and they stuck them in the Oddfellows and groups like that. But they didn't operate.
Who was the Oddfellows?
This is another secret society that blacks had.
I never heard of them. I heard of the Masons, of course, but not the Oddfellows.
Now the Masons, the white Masons were social, but the black Masons were economic, social, political, and spiritual. They took care of all the community's needs the same way they did in Africa. So Garvey, when he came here, he observed that black people in this country had the most advanced economic, political, political and social organization of any Africans in the world. We were more highly organized than anyone in the Caribbean or Africa. And so Garvey built on that. And the only way he could be, and the majority of Garvey's members came from the South. His chapter, his headquarters was in New York. His second strongest chapter was in Philadelphia, led by Eason, who was the American leader, but the strongest base of Garveyism was in the South. He had 75 chapters in Louisiana alone. Garvey did. So these were Southern blacks. They embraced Garvey because, first of all, Garvey was pushing what they were already doing. And these rural blacks and blacks in the North woke Garvey up. And then Garvey woke black people up. He didn't come here a radical. We radicalized him. He came here supporting the King of England's war, World War I, King George. But when he got in contact with blacks who had come back from fighting in World War I in this country, who were race conscious and said, hell no, we won't go and fight any more white man's war, this radicalized Garvey. He became race conscious and anti-war. That enabled him to launch his movement because he piped into our culture.